Today on the Bourbon Bytes podcast, Michter's is releasing 2 new Legacy Series bourbons. Pinhook Rye wins an outstanding award, and Knob Creek announces Cask Strength store pick releases. Plus, I'm reviewing a Cask Strength pick from Mississippi's oldest distillery, or am I? Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Bourbon Bytes podcast. I'm your host, Clifton. Today is Thursday, July 3rd, right ahead of the holiday. Hopefully, you guys have some amazing plans with your friends and family, or if not, just spending some time enjoying the time off. I'm actually heading to Las Vegas this weekend, so by the time you hear this, I'm most likely already on a flight to the Strip. It's been a minute since I've gone. Those of you that have been following me for a while know that I typically go to Vegas at least once every 3 or 4 months. I'm a huge fan of this city. Of course, I only live about 45-minute flight from there, from LAX. So it's a very easy trip, but I do enjoy a little bit of gambling, enjoying the city, the lights, the bars, the food. We're actually going to Kelly Clarkson's new residency on opening night on July 4th, so that should be a lot of fun. Always been a fan of her. I think she's an amazing vocalist. I can't wait to see what she performs. Never seen her live. Funny enough, I'm actually planning to go to a ton of concerts this year. It wasn't really planned, but it seems like a lot of people are just on tour this time of year, so yeah. If I'm ever not online for a stream or for a podcast, just know I'm most likely either at a concert or on vacation. But before I took my trip, I wanted to make sure to get this episode out because there is some whiskey news and reviews that I want you guys to know. The biggest of which is the new 2025 Legacy Series releases from Michter's. Now, these are regular releases they've been putting out every year. This is the Bomberger's Declaration and the Shink's Homestead Sour Mash. I remember buying these probably 3 or 4 years ago when they were more readily available. Haven't bought the more recent batches. The prices have gone up quite a bit and the availability has kind of gone down, at least where I am. But they're considering this year's release more experimental than ever. Now, both the Bomberger's and the Shink's Homestead releases are releasing this month, this July. But actually, they released a third release earlier in the year called Bomberger's PFG. And I actually did not know that this ever came out. I had never heard of it. But it was introduced as the third member of the series, and the PFG stands for Precision Fine Grain. And this was announced back in February, actually. So I give myself credit, I was not doing the podcast then. Now, they don't release the mash bill of this or any of the releases, but this one is aged with French oak. We all know I'm a big fan of French oak in whiskey. I think it really amplifies and complements some whiskeys. And I love seeing brands really try it out and see how it works for them. So the PFG is finished in barrels made of fine-grained French oak from several different forests within the region of France. These staves were then air-dried for at least 40 months by a local river in France and put together for the finishing. Now that one comes with a red label. It's bottled at 100.2 proof. Speaking of precise, that is a very specific proof. And the retail on that one was $140. So has anyone tried that? I didn't even know this existed until I was looking at all these new releases that just came out this month. Very interesting, a bit high a price for a 100 proof whiskey, but I'd definitely be interested in trying it. I do love Michter's releases and I do love French oak. I just kind of wish I would see a little bit more about what the age statement might be for these bottles. I know that the staves were aged for a minimum of 40 months outdoors, but that doesn't really tell me anything about the whiskey inside the barrels. So it's a little not clear, so that's why I wouldn't necessarily pull the trigger on that at first glance, but I would absolutely love to try it. But right now, we're going to talk about the 2 main releases, which, of course, is the Bomberger's Declaration and the Shink's Homestead. Now, Bomberger's Declaration comes in at 108 proof. Like more other recent releases of the whiskey, it is aged in Chinkapin oak barrels instead of the typical American white oak. And they say that this emphasizes wood science as the key to character for this line. Now, even though I looked at this before, I had to remind myself what Chinkapin oak is. It is a fast-growing, long-living hardwood tree, growing 12 to 24 inches a year. Now, I know Old Charter Oak from the Buffalo Trace line has previously used this Chinkapin oak before, so some of this info I'm pulling up is from their release about that. But everything I'm seeing says this oak brings out a sweet toffee and butterscotch nose and vibrant fruit flavors on the palate, even at a young age. I'm seeing things like cherry and spearmint and herbs and honey, all these great sounding notes. Now, to be honest, it's been a minute since I've actually had a Michter's Bomberger's release. Like I said, the last one I had was probably 2018, 2019. Just been harder to find. I mean, I see them pop up, but they're sold out instantly. I remember there was a day where they were just on the shelves. Now, as with a lot of things in the world of whiskey, that's to be expected. But now that I'm a little bit more advanced in my knowledge of different types of barrel, whether it be French oak, Mise casks, anything fun like that, I would love to do a side-by-side of this with something that's not aged in those barrels and see what characteristics are coming specifically from that Chinkopin oak. So they just tell you age statement based on the amount of age on the drying of the oak. It says it varies from 18 months to 3 years to 4 years to 5 years. Beyond that, it really doesn't tell you anything about the age of this whiskey. So that's a little bit of the reason that I've always kind of been hesitant about these releases. Yes, I would absolutely love to try them, but we're not getting really much transparency on what's going into them. Now, the Shinks Homestead Sour Mash Whiskey, this was first bottled back in 2018. This one's coming in at 91.2 proof. And it's most popular because it features different grain varietals that are rarely seen in other Michter's releases and other American whiskeys in general. Last year, they used a malted rye in the release, and this time they are using caramel malt. Now, you'll notice this one's labeled as a sour mash whiskey. It doesn't meet the criteria to be considered a bourbon or a rye. So again, we don't know the mash bill, but this one was at least partially finished in French oak toasted, not charred barrels. So that makes it a little bit interesting, a little bit unique. For example, in 2024, they released a malted rye and for the first time a caramel malt in the recipe. I think it's a little misleading because it makes you think of flavor profiles that aren't necessarily always there. And I can go into a whole deep dive on that, but I do want to say that they don't tell me any of that on this year's release. This year, it just says that it was partially finished in a French toasted but not charred barrel. And this was meant to accentuate the character of the rye in the whiskey. So similar to the Bombergers, they're working with French oak here. And neither of these have age statement, like I said. The Bombergers is labeled a straight bourbon whiskey, so we know that it's at least 4 years old. But the other expressions we really don't know. Of course, we like to assume that they are significantly older, especially at the price point. Speaking of which, the Bombergers comes in at $120 and Shinks comes in at $110. Now that's retail. Of course, they get marked up quite a bit. Like I said in the past, I've enjoyed both of these releases. I haven't bought them in recent years because the price continues to go up and the transparency doesn't get any more transparent. Sometimes I understand things like contracts and things like that preventing you from being honest about how long something's aged or where it's distilled. But this one, I don't know. I feel like they're being a little bit intentionally vague with their descriptions. So as someone that really does support transparency in whiskey, especially when you're talking about something that's over $100, a collectible release, I think there should be a little bit more honesty in terms of what we're actually getting, even if it doesn't, give away their secrets. I totally get keeping your secrets, but if you're going to put a whiskey out and you're going to finish it, at least tell us, how old the whiskey was before it was finished, or maybe even tell us how long it was finished. If I'm going to buy a nice bottle like that, I'm going to want a story to go along with it. And if I can't really talk much about what went into the bottle, it's really not going to give me what I want from it. Yes, it may taste amazing, and no doubt these probably are both great. But if I don't have a story to go with it and nothing to really justify the price before buying it, it's definitely a try before I buy type situation. Now, before we move on to the next big news story, I do want to give a shout out to Pinhook's new 9-year rye. It's part of their vertical series. This one actually scored a 98 points in the Gold Outstanding Award at the IWSC North America Awards. This, of course, is distilled at MGP, 95% rye, 5% malted barley, aged at Cask and bottled at cask strength, 111.2 proof. Retails around $90. I've had mixed feelings about Pinhook over the years. I do love Cask as a distillery. Some of the releases have kind of been hit or miss for me. Speaking of try before you buy, like the last release, I think Pinhook is one of those for me. However, seeing that this new release got a 98 point and a gold award makes me definitely want to seek it out. Now, we all know that these award things are subjective. Sometimes there's, people saying that they bought their awards. Again, I don't know the details. I'm not in the industry in that way, so I can't really speak to that. But I do love reading other people's opinions on whiskeys and seeing something score highly makes me really want to try it. So I'm going to keep an eye out for that Pinhook release. I have seen the previous vertical rye releases. This is just one that has not quite hit my area yet, or if it has, I haven't noticed it. But yeah, I'm curious to try it. I think, the older the whiskey gets, the better it's going to get. $90 for a 9-year cask strength, and there's nothing to really complain about there. I'm really excited to give that one a try. Now, the next story is new to the podcast, but it's something that I've kind of been hearing rumblings about lately. If you've been following my YouTube channel, you know that I recently picked up the Knob Creek Cask Strength Traveler's exclusive release from a duty-free shop at LAX. It's the first time I've ever seen a cask strength release of Knob Creek bourbon, other than the 25th anniversary that came out several years ago, and the cask strength Ryes. But there have been talks of a new option for barrel selects at Knob Creek to come in at cask strength rather than traditional 120 proof. And that is seemingly confirmed here in this recent article from Forbes magazine. They say that they are coming out with a single barrel select cask strength release. I've seen the TTB label over at Cumming Whiskey. By the way, if you guys aren't following Cumming Whiskey on Instagram, they are an amazing resource for all the latest and greatest bottles that are hitting the shelves soon. Plus, they're just a really good guy, so make sure to give them a follow. But yeah, this article says that this uncut, unfiltered bourbon is the latest addition to the brand's lineup, offering a higher proof option for drinkers and retailers looking for a more intense, straight-from-the-barrel whiskey experience. And I know maybe some people may feel like, why? It's already 120 proof, but I think the integrity of having a straight-from-the-barrel cask strength release is something that's missing a lot in barrel-proof picks. I mean, we are seeing it recently with, Elijah Craig. They're now going to barrel-proof picks. But a lot of brands, when you do picks, you do have to end up, unfortunately, bringing it down to a standard proof point. And Knob Creek, for the longest time, was one of those brands. But now seeing that they're letting you bottle it at cask strength is really, really exciting, especially for someone that is a huge, huge fan of the brand. Now, in terms of proof of these new cask strength releases, it says for the bourbon, they're going to be approximately 110 to 130 proof. And the rye is going to be 100 to 120 proof. So theoretically, these could be lower proof than what we're currently seeing, but it's cask strength. They're not watered down at all. Sometimes you get a lower yield, you get higher proofs, or you get like a very high yield and a lower proof. But getting to try it at cask strength, I think, is the best part of this. I'm definitely going to keep an eye out for a bottle. It looks like price range is anywhere from $59.99 to $99.99. Again, it depends on the pick. It says retail on this is $69.99. But as with most picks, it really does vary on where you're getting it, what state you're in, all that fun stuff. But again, super, super promising. I can't wait to get my hands on a bottle. Now, lastly, I get to share a little bit of my travel enthusiast side of things. If you don't know that about me, I'm a big whiskey lover, food lover, and travel lover. So this article kind of hits all my favorite things. Now, this news is coming out of Bardstown, Kentucky, which many of us know as the bourbon capital of the world. And I'm excited to learn that they just got their first luxury hotel with a pool and a speakeasy. Now, this just opened in early June. It's called The Trail. It had a major redesign over the past few years. Looking at the photos and videos of this new experience gets me very, very excited. Now, the reason I say luxury hotel is because this is classified as the city's first high-end boutique hotel. Not sure how you guys travel. I love to travel on a budget, but when I see a chance to try something unique and something just very, very special to the town that it's in, I'm willing to splurge a little bit to get that full experience. And this seems like the perfect hotel that I would absolutely do that in if I had the opportunity. So funny enough, this was first opened back in 1971 as a Holiday Inn, but it's now become part of the National Register of Historic Places. It's had a bit of a mixed history from going in and out of business over the past few years, but in 2021 it was put up for auction, and that's when high school friends Will Hardy and Nathan Edmonds put in a bid and won. I'll skip all the financial part of it because, again, that's not something that I'm an expert in or care that much about, but I will talk about the experience you'll get if you are staying here. Their executive chef, Marvin Woods, is the host of the Emmy-nominated show Home Plate. They've written 3 cookbooks, and they helped former First Lady Michelle Obama with her Let's Move campaign. Lots of points on their resume to be excited about. But this restaurant is 110 seats. and has a lobby bar that goes out into the hotel called Embers. The food is described as Southern fare with a healthy-ish twist, where they celebrate local ingredients and recipes for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Seeing some of the photos, it looks fantastic. I encourage you guys to look this up if you're in the area. Check it out. But that's not all. There's more reasons I'm excited about this hotel. And the biggest one is the fact that they have a speakeasy in the hotel. And it's called the Bourbon Vault. It's actually hidden behind a floor-to-ceiling piece of art, and it is a dimly lit 36-seat lounge with a mid-century modern vibe. I just love the look of it. I'm seeing the photos here. I don't know their bourbon selection, but with a name like that, I have a good feeling they're going to have some really good bottles. But it does seem like the perfect place to center your bourbon trail trip, especially if you're going to be hanging out in the Bardstown area. Now, Bardstown is home to some of my absolute favorites out there. Of course, Heaven Hill, one of my top distilleries ever, but you also have Bardstown Bourbon Company, Lux Row, Willett, and lots of other smaller ones in the area as well. So if you're looking for a good home base for your next bourbon trip, definitely look into this, especially if you're willing to splurge a little bit. Of course, they have a lot of different room types and suites depending on your budget, but definitely consider this an option when you're going to the area if you're looking for a bit of relaxation in between the distillery trips, because I know when I go on the bourbon trail, I do a lot of drinking. Of course, I do a lot of Ubering and ride sharing. But it's always nice to have a good home base nearby to come back to kind of recover, chill out, maybe enjoy some drinks at the bar before dinner, or even have a nice dinner and speakeasy experience on property. Now, of course, they have a spa. It's actually a 660-foot detox wellness area with a sauna, a cryotherapy pod, oxygen bar, and IV therapy lounge. And trust me, you're probably going to need that IV therapy. But yeah, for those of you looking for accessibility, the hotel does comply with ADA regulations for service animals. It has a step-free entrance, and the hotel features automatic doors. They also have 4 fully accessible guest rooms and the accessible King Suite. They're all equipped with lower sinks and counters, wheelchair-accessible doorways and layouts, roll-in showers with grab bars, and visual and vibrating fire alarms. Y'all know I'm a big advocate for accessibility on this channel. We have some amazing members of this community that are disabled, including myself, so I always like to give those shout-outs whenever I can. I know that's kind of a pain point when it comes to a lot of places in Kentucky. You know, the small bars, the speakeasies, they're really difficult to know if they're going to be accessible to everyone, so I'm happy to share that this hotel is. Now, if you have questions about the specific parts of it, like the speakeasy, you can actually visit their website at thetrailhotel.com or reach them at 502-393-4150. Now, if you are a representative from the hotel and you want to reach out and have me give an honest review of the hotel, like I give honest reviews of my whiskey, reach out, contact@bourbonbytes.com. All right, well, it is the time of the episode where I get into my bite-sized review. So this week's bite-sized review is a whiskey and a brand and a state that I've never had anything from. So I thought it would be a fun one to do on the podcast to really kind of get a first impression of not only the brand, but Mississippi whiskey. It's called Old Soul Straight Bourbon Whiskey. And this is a store pick from my local store, K&L Wine and Spirits. It's a 2024 private barrel selection of their Cask strength straight bourbon whiskey. Mash bill is 21% rye, 75% corn, 4% malted barley. Now, according to the back of the bottle, it says, this Old Soul was selected for our private client program. Throughout the maturation process, we keep a watchful eye on single barrel profiles that show unique or distinguished characteristics. These rare finds are shared only with clients with a discerning palate. Barrels that undergo this process are some of the most judged and carefully reviewed. We hope that you enjoy this bottle and its character as much as you enjoy the characters that championed this unique Old Soul. This is an uncut, unfiltered bourbon, and it's actually from Cathead Distillery, which is Mississippi's oldest distillery, apparently. Now, as exciting as that sounds, I had to do a little bit of a deep dive on this bottle. There's a strategically placed label that's covering up the additional info on this bottle. I'm going to peel it off and see what's hidden behind it. All right. Okay. It's what I expected. I don't think this was intentional. I think it's just a barcode that was added by my store. But behind it, it does say distilled in Indiana and aged and bottled by Cathead Distillery. So yes, this is, of course, sourced MGP bourbon. Again, I don't have a problem with that. I do feel like it's a little bit misleading of it to be called a Mississippi whiskey. And of course, to be say it's a product of Mississippi's oldest distillery, because you know, even if it's aged there, it's really not their distillate. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just a stickler for things like that. But I really was excited when I saw this on the shelves. And I'll be honest, I grabbed it because it said it was a Mississippi bourbon. But yeah, full disclosure, this is MGP. But I'm still excited to try it. It is a 6-year-old release coming in at 121.36 proof, 60.68% ABV. I paid $43.99. That's the main reason I picked it up, seeing a 6-year single barrel bourbon pick from one of my favorite stores. But I do think, I think for the price for a 6-year MGB product, it's great. But I'm a little misled by the labeling. But enough about that. Let's see how good the whiskey actually is. Let's go ahead and give this Old Soul a nose. It's definitely unique. I mean, they say that they do age it in Mississippi, so that introduces a whole nother climate of aging. We talked a little bit last week's episode about climate aging and how it's different between Texas and Kentucky. And I think Mississippi is definitely no different than that. I imagine Mississippi gets really hot summers, probably similar to Texas. So the whiskey probably really saturates that oak in that hot weather. Probably not as much fluctuation as you would get in Kentucky. Honestly, this has a different expression of oak than I'm used to. It's like it skips past the the green new oak quality that I give to a lot of craft whiskeys. It has an element of that, like a little twinge of it, but it almost goes straight to the bark. I mean, this smells like a dried, a little bit of like a sappy quality to it. Definitely earthy in a way. It doesn't seem too sweet or anything like that. I mean, this smells like it's taking on a lot of character from that oak, which is to be expected when you're dealing with high temperature climates. Yeah, that makes it kind of difficult to see how much age is showing on the nose, just because it's such a distinct characteristic of it, almost like it's pulled out that little bit of bitter wood tannins a bit early. Not to say it smells young, but it kind of is bringing out those flavors a bit more pronounced than I would have thought. It makes me wonder how it's going to taste, so let's give it a try. Cheers. Oh, wow. Okay. Huh. Yeah, I mean, it's still not sweet. There's like a darker sweetness to it, but the first thing I'm getting on this is more of like a dried tobacco note, or even like I sometimes say like a library note, like an old book, a bit of an attic, a bit of a cedar. That really tastes like an older whiskey on first sip. Wow, okay. Hold on. I might have been a little harsh on my first impression of it. I mean, this doesn't discount how I felt about the transparency, but that palate was not what I expected. I gotta go for a second sip. The sweetness is showing a little bit more, but it's not like a super sweet caramel. It's more of like a dark chocolate, a very bitter chocolate, but there's some like vanilla creeping in there every now and then. It's such a hefty dark note otherwise that I feel like the sweetness kind of gets lost. Mouthfeel wise, I think that's pretty hefty. Body, I think it's about a medium body finish as well, but when it kind of sits on the palate, when it first hits your tongue, it does have a richness to it that kind of makes you think that this is a, it's a very good proof coming in at, like I said, 121.36. So the proof shows up, but there's a bit of an oiliness and a heftiness that kind of lends itself to making you think that this is a higher end whiskey than, at least what I paid for it. Yeah, the finish, like I said, even though it's not super long, it's got a bit of a chocolatiness that goes down like a dark hot chocolate kind of note. Maybe even like a chocolate sundae with like dark chocolate. It's nice. I mean, the palate surprised me how much I'm liking this. I would almost consider this a dessert bourbon, but not in a sweet way. I know that doesn't make sense. This is like if you want a classy dessert. Let's say, you have a nice wine, you want some dark chocolate, you want to treat yourself, right? You don't want the cheap Hershey's Kisses chocolate. You want a really nice piece of dark craft chocolate. That's the realm that this is in, but at a reasonable price point. I think this is a winner. It beat my expectations, especially once I learned that it was Indiana bourbon, and it really brought a unique flavor that I don't have anywhere else in my collection. So I'm going to have to go out and try to find another bottle of this, maybe a different pick, a different age, but I'm curious to hear what you guys think. Have you guys had Old Soul bourbon before? I just think I was kind of misled a little bit by it being labeled as a product of Mississippi's oldest distillery. That's why you got to really check your bottles, folks. I tell you, sometimes they're really sneaky, trying to make you think that this is a new product, but really it's just sourced. And with that pro tip, we're going to wrap up this week's episode. Again, thank you guys so much for listening. If you are enjoying the show, make sure to follow it on your favorite podcast platform, wherever you get your podcasts. I've been seeing your reviews come in. I gave one shout out on last week's live stream. If you leave a review on whatever platform, let me know. I'm going to give you a shout out next week. If you're new here, you can also check me out on YouTube every Thursday night around 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. I go live with a 1-hour live stream. Not this week because I'm going to Las Vegas, but usually every Thursday. And if you want to support the channel, you can support for as little as $2 a month at bourbonbytes.com or patreon.com/bourbonbytes. Your support means a ton to me, and it makes all of this possible. So thank you to all of my Byte Club members and Patreon supporters. I love y'all. And until next week, cheers. Hope you have a safe holiday. Don't drink and drive. Either have a designated driver or call an Uber. Yes, it's expensive or whatever, but you know what? Your life is way more valuable than that expensive Uber. So be safe out there. Enjoy your holiday weekend. Or if you listen to this later, enjoy your day. All right. Cheers, y'all. And I will talk to you next episode.